get the tea from me. LVB.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to What's the Gossip, and today I'm joined by Lisa MacCarley, a probate attorney who tells me what the fuck is going on with the Free Britney movement. How are you, Lisa?
Good, how are you?
Where's your surname from? Are you Irish?
Actually, it's my ex-husband's last name, and yes, he's Irish. I'm English and Italian myself. So, but yeah, I kept my ex-husband's name after our divorce because I liked it.
Oh, Italian, that means you can cook.
Oh, well, that's why you can see when you see videos of me, that's why I speak with my hands. But no, I can't cook. Not to save my life.
I'm a whiz at the microwave.
Yes, me too. Yeah, exactly.
So, Lisa, how's your day going?
So far, so good. Very busy, very interesting. Trying to keep up with Instagram, which is all really still rather new to me. And I've just started watching everybody on Twitter, and it's a brand new world for me. I didn't grow up with these things, but it is very, very interesting. What I will say is that no matter what else Miss Spears may take away from this, she definitely has the most passionate and compassionate fans in the universe. Brilliant, beautiful. I wish I could adopt you all as members of my family. I'm so impressed.
Your voice is being heard loud and clear as well, isn't it?
Because I speak truth to power, I'm very comfortable and confident in my assessment because, ironically, I noticed this pattern of abusive conservatorships about 10 years ago. And I specifically took myself off of the roster to be a court-appointed attorney because I wanted no part of being on that list. And that has basically stood the test of time. It took a long time, but I was right. I've collected a lot of examples of abusive conservatorships. So if anyone wants to call me out, and I mean if any of my colleagues or if any of the judicial officers want to have a conversation, I've got the receipts.
So how did you get started with the Free Britney movement?
Well, it was really an accident. And in my life, I tell people all the time that the best parts of my life are almost always an accident, including getting pregnant. So the things I love the most are an accident. And so I had finally reached the point where I was boiling over with anger and frustration at what I call family separation cases. And this is the one that was noted in that wonderful Netflix film, I Care a Lot. So one of the sub-stories that you just cannot miss is the man that wants desperately to see his son. I am here to tell you that those types of atrocities are very real, and that does happen, and it is not a fiction and it's not a myth. I have those cases. It is disgusting to see the way that these probate courts pull families apart based on what I call, phony analysis or, just complete lack of empathy and understanding about, for example, dementia and other ailments related to, let's say, assaults on the brain, traumatic brain injury, dementia, even some types of developmental disabilities. So I had in April 2019 made a commitment to do everything in my power to fight back against these probate court abuses. I was, like many people in Los Angeles, somewhat aware of the Britney Spears conservatorship, but, you reach a point where you don't necessarily have to be involved in all of the local gossip, and what these other lawyers were doing was not really of interest to me. I am very dedicated in my work and in the clients that I have. So, I stayed in my own lane. But COVID really brought me to a point of depression and frustration because I had been meeting with state legislators. I had been going to Sacramento, and I had actually invested a lot of my time and money creating a charity that I called Betty's Hope. And this was because of two cases that I had. where Bettys, two different Bettys, could not be any more different, but both victimized by the dysfunctional probate court system. And I really had no idea that Britney Spears had been also swept in. And I'll explain the dysfunction in a minute. But COVID shut everything down. The legislators didn't want to talk to me, and of course, then the social unrest, watching a man be, I call it, lynched on public television, just brought me to a very depressed and sad state. So when Kevin Wu called me and said, would you mind stopping by? I said, sure. I have nothing else to do. It's like I'm useless. I have no reason to, like justice doesn't exist. Why not? And it was a very warm but pleasant July afternoon, July 22nd. And I honestly, Leigh, I just went to support the young people. I really did not know the facts of what had happened. I didn't have the documents. I really just went to tell the young people, I'm supportive. I get what you're saying about probate court. But in that moment, Kevin handed me a pink megaphone. And I think that I just responded by belting out, the most honest, emotional sense of frustration. And little did I know that I was nailing it as far as what had happened to Britney Spears. And the summary of what happened in the Britney Spears debacle, I'll call it, in February 2008, is that Judge Reva Getz, then a commissioner, relied upon someone who was one of her favorites, was somebody that was often appointed as court-appointed counsel. There wasn't really any explanation or understanding as to why that was going on, but I had no idea that they had kicked Adam Streisand out of the courtroom. And that was, to me, a violation that triggered my curiosity so that I would continue. I wanted to see and read more of what happened. But that was how it began, just me wanting to support someone else, even though I was feeling very sad and frustrated about, the condition of the world as it was.
So one of the first tweets I ever saw from you was a tweet stating that even from the very first moment of the conservatorship, it wasn't legal.
It was terrifying. I mean, it's absolutely terrifying to think that on February 1st, 2008, and everyone needs to listen, not only did the judge use declarations and appoint her favorite attorney, Sam Ingham, but they decided that they didn't have to give Britney Spears notice. They truncated her right to meet with other lawyers, which was just, I just couldn't even believe that they would make this order. And then they basically made an order that she couldn't leave California. And all of this done on an ex parte, unnoticed, meaning an unnoticed is a legal term that means that basically when you want to seek relief, that somebody else may oppose, you have to give them notice. You have to give them a fair opportunity to be heard. So February 1st, they just went in with their pleadings. The judge appoints Sam Ingham, or, however that got done is so irregular that never gets done. In other words, of all the cases that I've been involved with, thousands, if not several hundred, I've never seen that done before. So they come back on Monday, and then Adam Streisand shows up and says, I've been retained by Britney Spears. And again, I've never imagined the judge saying, well, I'm going to ask the court-appointed attorney whether or not Miss Spears can hire her own attorney. Again, such a glaring violation of constitutional rights. And the fact that nobody's noticed it, to me, it just speaks to how broken our legal system is. But yes, I speak early and often about what happened in those first 4 or 5 critical days, because in my opinion, once you have tainted, once you have undertaken steps that are violations of law, violations of basic principles of fairness and due process, there's really nothing that you can do to right that ship. Meaning that, they are caught in a terrible situation where everybody's pretending that this is in Britney Spears' best interest. But I think the money bears out that this really is about the lawyers, isn't it?
So was it not legal what they did to begin with?
It is unlawful. What they did violated the California probate code, and they violated the California Constitution. I actually have done presentations where the California probate code mirrors or is meant to enhance the protections afforded to people that reside within the United States. And one of the primary concepts, one of the building blocks of our entire legal system is the right to be represented by attorneys of your own choice. So the moment that Reva gets kicked, Adam Streisand, out of the courtroom, it has been my position that justice was lost for Britney Spears. It was an absolute statutory violation. Even if Britney Spears had shown up and she was talking about the man on the moon coming to visit her, but she opposed the conservatorship. In other words, no matter how irrational she may have presented in the moment, and to be honest, I don't think she was irrational at all, she always had an absolute right to be represented by an attorney of her own choice.
So you've gone through all of the documents and you explain it so well for people like me on Twitter that don't understand what the hell we're looking at. What has been the most shocking piece of information you found?
Well, it's all pretty shocking, but I have to say that when I think I've seen it all, then something else happens. So now Mr. Ingham has filed a petition to appoint Jody Pace Montgomery as permanent conservator for Britney Spears. Most recently, the shocking thing for me is, again, this sort of hoax of where does this notion of James Spears temporarily relinquishing his authority as conservator come from? Leigh, I've looked at the probate code. I've been in the probate courts. I've spent way too much time listening to cases, just as part of the gallery. There is no such thing as a temporary relinquishment of a conservatorship. It doesn't exist. The probate code speaks to somebody resigning as conservator. It speaks to removal, and it speaks to suspension of a conservator. But there is no such thing as a temporary relinquishment. So when Mr. Ingham files a petition that he verifies, saying on one hand that his client lacks the capacity to provide for her own food, clothing, shelter, and medical care, I can't even begin to wrap my head around how he's going to come up with the necessary requirements under our ethics code, the business and professions code, to say that she can give informed consent. All right, so let me break this down. A person who is alleged to not be able to provide for her own food, clothing, shelter, and medical care is deemed to be unable to give informed written consent to actions that are adverse to her. And a petition to appoint a permanent conservator is adverse to the person facing conservatorship.
Is there any way to hold these people accountable?
Oh, such a great question. And the answer is, if the judge is going along with it and nobody that has standing is going along with it, then really you can't. It's been my observation that the only thing that the Free Britney movement can do, and we'll talk about some of the other ideas that I've been sort of tossing around, you have to make this part of a public outcry, a public demand for accountability, because within the probate court system, there is nothing that can be done there. And this is part of the dysfunction of it. If the judge is going along with it, there's really no recourse outside of the probate court, which is why the Free Britney movement is so important, is just so relevant to our aging population and people with disabilities. It's why everybody who gets in touch with me, I thank them. I'm so grateful because I've been trying for years and nobody was listening. So the answer to your question is, within the probate court system, if the judge is going along with it, then there really is no place for someone, let's say people like us, observing this injustice can go.
Do you think it was ever about her best interests?
I took the time to read Leigh Spears' book, Through the Storm. I took the time, and I've spent many, many hours. A year ago, if you said that I would try to know everything there is to know about Britney Spears, I probably would have said, probably not. Again, celebrity in and of itself does not interest me, but I think Britney Spears was in a crisis. I think that what the family law court was doing to her was outrageous. And this, again, goes to the broken American legal system. When you think about family separation, how dare some family law commissioner impose the obligation of getting a California driver's license or anything on a woman who's just given birth to 2 little babies. Her body was full of these beautiful, wonderful hormones that all she wanted to do was be with her children. And I attribute her public breakdowns to whatever extent they are, although I feel I feel like I'd be angry too if the paparazzi was hounding me. I think that Britney Spears was traumatized. I think she was exploited. I think she was abused. Do I think that she was so sufficiently handicapped that she was unable to provide for food, clothing, and shelter? Absolutely not. I think that an intervention that was far less cumbersome than a conservatorship would have been helpful, needed, warranted. I don't see any reason why she needed a temporary conservatorship under those circumstances where she was basically not even allowed, not even given the paperwork that was filed to conserve her. I mean, the things that were being agreed upon, I mean, it's just outrageous. What I believe Britney Spears needed, because I have 2 little, I've had children myself, was empathy and understanding and daily hugs and kisses from 2 of the cutest little babies I'd ever seen. I think that would have gone a long way to making Miss Spears happier and more stable and taking her out of crisis. Separating a young mother from her babies was cruel and unconscionable. And I will say that every day, all day, if it helps.
Do you think it's suspicious that Lou Taylor helped set up the conservatorship and now has ran off into the distance?
All right. A lot of people ask me questions about these, what I call these Hollywood people. Honestly, Leigh, I don't know anything about her. I know that she was in the picture, and I know that perhaps from her point of view, as I understand, and again, reading Leigh Spears' book, so, and I didn't memorize Leigh Spears' book, but the sense I got was Jamie was upset because of this man named Sam, lots of Sams in this whole story, and Sam Lufty apparently was controlling or manipulative. I get that. And it would be frightening to me as a parent as well. My daughter is actually 27 right now. So I see that he wanted to protect Britney. But how much Lou did, to be honest, I'm going to point my fingers at the lawyers and the judge, Vivi Getz. Those are the people I hold responsible.
Do you think it's a bit suspicious that she only has 60+ million in the bank?
Well, that is what's called carry value. So what it's really worth, no one, I couldn't really say. I haven't reviewed the accountings, but is it suspicious? Well, I don't know what her carrying costs are. And I don't, again, because my expertise is in the law, Leigh, I would be out of my realm to say whether or not somebody should be earning more or less. To me, if I was Miss Spears in her shoes, I would take my money. I would wait till my sons were both 18 years old, and I'd leave California. I'd leave the country, frankly, and go live a beautiful, wonderful life anywhere. Is $60 million enough to provide for a family of 3 or 4 or 5? Absolutely. So I don't know that it's suspicious, but I don't know what's accurate for that range of what she's performed, what her contracts are. And to be honest, I'm a family person. I look at relationships. I look at motherhood. I'm much more disturbed that her custody was reduced to 30%. That makes me very upset. And the fact that maybe these men, maybe her father, maybe the court-appointed attorney were the ones that agreed to that, that actually gets me much more riled up than even the money part.
Speaking of a family, why do you think her father won't surrender?
So interesting, right? So why wouldn't he? Well, it's obviously he's doing what lawyers are telling him to do, and I'm suspicious of the legal advice that he's getting. But it is part of, I think, what Bryan Spears revealed in his interview with Dr. Drew is that in this family, their culture, meaning their family culture, not the United States culture, leans towards more of a paternalistic, some people would call it toxic masculinity. So I think it has a lot to do with just what his old-fashioned perception is of what his job is as a dad. In my view, what he's doing is not appropriate. I look at my role as a parent is to help my children achieve more independence, even though I would love for them to be, dependent on me all their lives because I love them. I want to take care of them. But our job as parents is to push the birds out of the nest so that they can fly on their own. So I do find it suspicious. I have to say that between Mr. Spears and the court are this group of lawyers, and again, I point to them. Seems like she should be able to live her life without her father's involvement, and why not just be her father? I mean, you're the father of one of the most beautiful, famous, talented, gorgeous creatures on earth. I mean, to me, that would be just, that is my daughter also, by the way. I'm just so proud of my daughter. I would never want to do anything that would put us in conflict. But I'm just going to say the lawyers. That's the short answer.
Do you ever see her getting actually out of this conservatorship?
What I see is enough public outcry. What I see are state senators here in California that are actually considering and putting forth Senate bills, legislation to make sure that what happened to Britney Spears does not happen over and over again, although I can assure you it has happened to many people. But do I think her prospects are good if the court and or the state bar and or some supervision, meaning the Judicial Council, Chief Justice, if they begin to understand how dysfunctional the establishment of this conservatorship was and how overbearing this situation is in terms of Miss Spears is literally not allowed to see people without the consent of her temporary conservator, I think that there will be enough of a push that even the presiding judge in Los Angeles County might finally say, I want an entirely new investigation. I want a new team. I want a new court-appointed attorney. And I want to take a look at this, but I see that as being the beginning of the end. I see the Free Britney movement as being instrumental in compelling a change in the status of this conservatorship.
If she gets out of the conservatorship, is there any possibility that she could legally sue the people that put her into it?
Oh, you're really asking me the right questions here. Look, based on what was done in February 2008, I would take that case on contingency. I think that violating somebody's constitutional rights and agreeing that they cannot see another attorney, testifying against your client to the extent that the court-appointed attorney represented to Reva Getz, and it's in writing. I mean, I'm not telling anybody anything new, that his client, quote, lacks the capacity to hire Adam Streisand. For me, I mean, because of my background, I consider this to be highly offensive. And I certainly hope that Ms. Spears, at the very least, consults with someone once she's out to determine whether or not she wants to take those steps. But it offends me to the core what happened to her.
After going through all of the documents, who do you think is the worst offender of the whole thing?
Well, this is the court-appointed attorney's show, and this was, I've known Mr. Ingham for a long, long time, and here's the question back. What is the job? What is the role? What is the purpose of a court-appointed attorney if not to protect the constitutional rights of the person facing conservatorship? What was the whole reason why our state legislators in Sacramento and even in Washington, D.C., why do they talk about due process? Why do they talk about protecting these sacred rights, to use another phrase? The whole point of the statutory framework is to make sure that people's constitutional rights are not violated. It is not to run roughshod over somebody's constitutional rights. There is a very, I think, kind of a dark humor movie called Idiocracy. I highly recommend it. There's a 2-minute trial scene where the attorney for the defendant, I don't want to give too much away, basically says, my client's guilty, like he stole all the money, right? And you just think that's the and he actually calls it the court-appointed attorney. And I have to laugh because, I mean, isn't that what Sam Ingham did? Didn't he say, my client lacks the capacity to retain counsel, which, by the way, is one of the a very, very low threshold, given that the law says, even if someone even if someone shows up and appears to look like they don't have the capacity to retain counsel, they still get an attorney. So how do you miss this? How do you hold yourself out to be the court-appointed attorney for the stars and miss something so basic, so pertinent? I have to say, and he was he's the mastermind of this. So I'm going to say that it's the role of the court-appointed attorney to protect constitutional rights.
So if you were called to work for Britney, what advice would you give her straight away?
Well, straight away, I'd say, let's do that. Rid of habeas corpus and let's get rid of this. I mean, the first thing I would do, is basically, it's just the procedural defects are so glaring. I think that would probably be sufficient if she wanted out. And then the second thing is, well, let's assemble a team of people that you trust. Let's assemble a checks and balances system so that nobody has control of and access to your assets. Let's start training your sons to understand investments and money management, because they're going to one day need that help. And let's figure out a way that you can thrive without the supervision of a court.
So what can all the people on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, what can we all do to help?
So as I said, the amazing thing that you have already done is you have utilized social media, which people my age, this is all still very much new, but apparently this is how we get to politicians. This is why movies and documentaries get made. But the other thing, everyone has in the United States a congressional representative or a state senator. I urge everyone, go on the website house.gov or just Google who is my senator, who is my congressional representative, and write those letters, make those calls to your congressional representative. I've already reached out to Jerry Nadler. I've already reached out to Adam Schiff, my congressional representative. My state senator, Anthony Portantino, absolutely knows what's going on. We need to continue to put pressure on the legislature so that they conduct an investigation, because I believe that once any competent agency outside of the court system finally convenes an investigation, and you've seen me, I've done the Twitter and Instagram. I mean, I've been keeping these records for 10 years. Put me under oath, and I can really tell these legislators what's going wrong, and we'll get that fixed. But I love the pressure. I love the media exposure that the Free Britney is bringing to the entire cause of probate and guardianship, or conservatorship and guardianship abuses. And
one final question. How hard will it be for Britney to put her dad in a conservatorship?
Well, I don't know where he lives. I'm not convinced he lives here. It seems like he lives in other states, and I would be totally out of my realm. But, hopefully Mr. Spears has put together an estate plan. I'm willing to bet at, like $10,000 a day, he could probably convince one of the lawyers at Holland and Knight to put together a nice estate plan. And if he ever becomes incapacitated, hopefully everyone will respect his wishes and allow the people that he chooses or wishes to choose to help take care of him in the event that he should ever fall into the darkness of incapacity, dementia, and so forth. It's a very cute question.
Thank you so much for doing this, Lisa, and thanks so much for everything you do on Twitter, for going through all the documents, explaining to people what the hell is going on. You're a necessary fountain of information, and we'd be lost without you.
Well, I'm just so sad about what happened to Britney. Honestly, I'm the type of person where I look at all of these people like they're my family. And I have to say that, Britney had always been part of my home life, because my daughter is 27. We've spent hours and hours and hours with her little karaoke machine. And I think I heard that song Lucky about 10 million times. I mean, the little girls loved Britney. And so she's always been sort of in my household, and getting to know her over Instagram, the videos, reading about her, watching videos, I have to say, you really can't help but fall in love with her. I mean, she really had such spark, such spunk, such a zest for life and happiness. Right now, I'd really want to choke people. I feel like they have taken a lot of her life force and sucked it out of her. And nothing would make me happier right now than to see her restored to that same spunky, playful, curious, delightful person that she was up until 2008. And I do blame the family law court. I think they were overly harsh, and probably because she was a celebrity. There's no reason to take anybody's children away unless she's literally wailing on those kids, unless she's physically abusive to those children. There was absolutely no reason to punish her for her behavior by basically torturing her. And that's how I look at it. Family separation is torture. Taking my children away, I'd rather you just chop off my limbs.
It's interesting you referenced your daughter singing Lucky when the song is pretty much about her now, isn't it?
Isn't it? Right? And isn't it? I've thought about that too a lot. How strange the world. And I'll tell you, there are other strange coincidences. Like I talk about April 2019 is like the moment where I actually took a video of myself, which I'll never show because I'm in a bathing suit. It's horrible. And I say to myself, I am now committed, I am committed to fixing the probate court. And I'm just going to do this. And when I had no idea that there was a Kevin Wu, I probably didn't even really know there was a Free Britney movement. But Kevin has gone on to say that he had at that same time, had the same epiphany. So there is that kind of that strange coincidence. But the other thing that I kind of go like, how did this happen? I was on vacation when I came to that epiphany because of my two Bettys, and I had gone to a very sad place, a plantation, a former plantation called Betty's Hope in Antigua and Barbuda. And did you know that that's where Britney Spears first went for rehab when she began to kind of fall into her crisis? And there's just a part of me that thinks there was maybe some kind of spiritual connection to all of this, something that we can't say, but for me to have picked a vacation to Antigua and Barbuda in itself was very unusual. I had never been to the Caribbean before. I always vacation in Mexico. And so that was a defining moment for me.
The universe sent you.
Right? I sometimes think that. And then even just my showing up in that pink megaphone, I had also bought one. So Kevin and I had a laugh the other day where I pulled mine out and I said, yeah, you were buying yours and holding rallies. And I was doing the same for my Betty Roberts in Lancaster. And I just think, wow, talk about like two souls that were kind of meant to meet each other. It's been very, very special to me. Very emotional.
Well, thanks for doing this.
Thank you. Thank you to the Free Britney movement. I love you all so much, and it means so much to me. And I'm going to keep fighting the good fight. And let's see how much longer. But I have to think when our state senators are enacting laws, basically the, anti-Britney Spears conservatorship laws. I thank the Free Britney movement for that 100% and keep going. I won't give up if you don't give up.
Oh, we love you.
I love you too. Anyway, it was my pleasure. Thank you so much. Look forward to seeing you on Twitter again. And if there's anything I can clarify, I'm certainly happy to do so.
Come get the tea from me. LVB.